The Adirondack Park Agency had a lot on its plate at yesterday's meeting, dealing with Eurasian water milfoil in Lake Luzerne, an ongoing debate over the definition of roads, and a very meta proposal taking comment on reducing public comments at its own meetings. Our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell sat in for all 8 hours of the debate and reports back on what you need to know on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from the Essex County Arts Council, promoting arts and culture through advocacy and grants to artists and organizations. More at essexcountyarts.org. And by Kinney Drugs, now offering a new mobile app to help patients better manage prescriptions for themselves and their family. More at kinneyDrugs.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Friday, May 12th. First up, the United States ended its public health emergency declaration regarding COVID-19 yesterday. Andrea Whitmarsh with the Essex County Health Department says that doesn't mean COVID is going away.
It does mean that cases are down sharply, and we can kind of move from this active response mode to sort of a monitoring and surveillance mode like we do for all other communicable diseases.
Whitmarsh spoke with Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman about how her department is pivoting while still keeping an eye on COVID.
We're getting back to a lot more of our core programming that we were doing before the 3 years of the pandemic, and our support of really active response activities for COVID-19 is going to be kind of ending, throughout, the rest of this year.
Right. And even though that shift is happening, are there any particular health measures you're still recommending for residents at this point?
Oh, absolutely. We would say for those people who are, at higher risk of becoming really sick from being infected, so anybody who's older or immune compromised or the really young, we would always recommend beyond just COVID-19 for any other illnesses, or if there's any concern of risk of getting really sick, to stay home. If you choose to wear a mask to protect yourself, that's always a good idea. If you are at higher risk, get vaccinated. Some of those same kinds of measures that we would recommend for other communicable diseases. We would say the same thing for COVID-19.
And talking about vaccines, you mentioned how the declaration ending is going to affect, the funding that comes through for the response. So how is that going to affect, availability and affordability of things like vaccines and tests going forward?
For right now, as long as there is a federal supply of COVID vaccine, those will remain free to anybody that needs them. And, the Essex County Health Department is continuing to offer COVID-19 vaccine appointments. We've been out on the road. We're bringing our mobile unit out, as we have done in the past, and we have Monday appointments every week at our clinic here in Elizabethtown. And that's the same. It should be the same for other providers that are offering the vaccine. So as long as there's that federal supply, the vaccine should remain free for anybody that wants one. As far as testing and treatments, that's really going to depend on, what type of insurance you have, whether you're insured or uninsured, and folks should just check in with either their provider or local health departments to see where they stand regarding that.
I'm wondering if you can reflect for a moment, because the pandemic, we've been in this for more than 3 years. What have you learned at the Essex County Health Department over that time? What did you do well? What were the challenges that you faced?
It really was a great way to enact some of the, policies and procedures that we always had in place in terms of responding to public health emergencies and threats. And it was a real eye-opening experience. We had certain things that we were really ready for, and other areas we knew we really need to kind of look back and reflect and make improvements.
That was Andrea Whitmarsh with the Essex County Health Department speaking with Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman. The Adirondack Park Agency settled a long-standing debate at its meeting yesterday over a road mileage limit inside the Blue Line. The APA also clarified its public commenting policy and approved the use of an herbicide on a lake in the southern Adirondacks. Emily Russell has the details.
Eurasian water milfoil was first discovered in Lake Luzerne in 1989. There are now dense pockets of the invasive plant around the lake's periphery. At its board meeting on Thursday, the APA's Aaron Zyman explained why Eurasian water milfoil is such a tough plant to tackle.
has no native predators in the northeast, and it can form dense beds of vegetation. And once established, it's difficult, if not impossible, to eradicate.
In recent years, though, there's been a push to use an herbicide known as Procelicor. It's not considered toxic to fish or other animals and only slightly toxic to invertebrates. It's also been used in 30 lakes around New York State, including Minerva Lake, also in the southern Adirondacks. Ziman told the board on Thursday that since Procelicor was used on Minerva Lake in 2020, there's been a rebalance of native plants.
There's some that increased, some that decreased, but they're all natives, and they're finding a competitive balance in a restored wetland after the treatment.
So this is being deemed a complete success then?
In staff's analysis, yes.
The town of Lake Luzerne applied for a permit to use Procelicor on its lake. They would have to gather data on its effects over the following year. But APA board member Zoe Smith pushed for a longer post-treatment survey.
We'd like to know the effectiveness, right, of whether or not it's working and then what the impacts are on the other plants. And the hand harvesting will give us the milfoil numbers, but not the rebound of the other plants.
The herbicide treatment is estimated to cost the town $37,000. Jerry Delaney, local government review board executive director, said requiring a longer post-treatment survey of the lake, as Smith suggested, would add unnecessary costs for the town of Lake Luzerne.
Local governments get squeezed between trying to do what is right and trying to not break a tax cap and trying to tell the rest of their town that, yes, we should be spending this money on these lakes. No, you don't get a whole lot of benefit out of it.
Zoe Smith was the lone vote against the measure. The rest of the board voted in favor of the use of an herbicide on Lake Luzerne. The other major item on the APA's agenda was the road mileage limit in wild forest lands in the park. The original master plan for the Adirondacks said there shouldn't be any material increase of wild forest roads from 1972 onwards. On Thursday, the board settled the debate. First, they agreed that there were 211 miles of roads back then and 206 miles today. The board also defined what a material increase would be, about 11% or an additional 13 miles of roads on wild forest lands. APA board member Joe Zalewski applauded their work on the issue.
We've been talking about it a year, and this approach at least would provide APA and DEC staff with the clarity they need on this issue moving forward, and it provides a limited amount of road mileage available should there be appropriate opportunities on future acquisitions.
But defining the road mileage limit on wild forest lands put some board members on edge. What if the state buys a plot of land with 14 miles of roads and wants to add it to a wild forest area? Then they'd have to get rid of 1 mile of road elsewhere. APA board member Mark Hall said he was uneasy about that.
At some point, maybe another 50 years, maybe 100 years, maybe 5 years, we don't know what might become available. And I struggle to support putting that threshold on this board, on the DEC moving forward.
The final measure does allow for future APA boards to reinterpret the total allowable mileage. Still, Mark Hall and fellow board member Dan Wilt voted against the measure. It passed 8 votes to 2, ending a year of extensive debate and revisions over the topic. Finally, the APA board settled its own policy debate. The agency was considering limiting public comment periods, both at its meetings and written comments on its agendas. The proposal drew backlash, though, with about 600 public comments largely opposing the move. The APA's Chris Cooper summarized those comments on Thursday.
This was a general topic that came up again and again with most commenters, is the importance of public comment to the agency's processes, making sure that the public has the right to provide input, that input is heard, that input is considered, and the board has the ability to process it.
The board voted unanimously to keep the public comment periods both at the start and end of its meetings. APA staff said it would also post its meeting agendas 2 weeks in advance, giving more time for public comments on those agendas. The next APA board meeting is in mid-June. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by I Am Snow Angel of Lake Placid and Oscar Sarmiento of Potsdam. I'm David Summerstein. Have a great weekend. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.